All right. Welcome to the randInt podcast with Raffy Chandra. Hooray!
Oh, wee!
All right. So this is going to be one of our standard episodes. So we're going to begin with, so how are you? So, how are you?
Not too bad. Still getting used to working like 5 days a week. It's still a little strange. Still settling in. It's been like 2 weeks now, but getting
Oh,
there.
yeah, when did you actually, because you went to Perth when Melbourne was going into lockdown. How
Yeah.
long?
So I quarantined here in Perth for 2 weeks, which kind of worked out. That was just at a random house in Fremantle. So kind of ended up being the same time that Melbourne was in lockdown. So whether I was there or here would have worked out pretty similar. But yeah, really can't complain too much about lockdown, to be honest. It's a good chance to get some work done. Good excuse to
It's
stay
so
home.
different to your normal daily thing. When you were in
The main change was I couldn't go out for coffee shops. So instead I started cooking. It was good. Started learning some more cooking stuff.
Yeah, someone went gone truffle crazy.
Yeah. With
What
fresh
inspired
truffles this weekend.
So the background to this is in our group WhatsApp. Chandra just sent a photo of what looked like mushrooms, but upon closer inspection, it was truffles. And he's like, "Yep, I'm gonna make something with it." I'm like, "Just deep fry it."
You do not deep fry $2.50 a gram. That seems like a poor life choice.
What inspired you to get truffles, and what did you do with it?
Well, I was one of the patients I was seeing actually earlier that week was like, this weekend's gonna be real annoying because around my house there's this silly festival that's on and everybody comes in and it just clogs up all the traffic. I was like, oh, what's the festival? Turned out it was this truffle festival, and I learned that apparently Manjimup down here exports 90% of the truffles from Australia. So it's one of the biggest exporters of truffles. I mean, I've had truffle before, but can't say I've been like a huge aficionado or something like that. So figured, oh, well, since there's a festival here, may as well go down and see what it's all about. Got some fresh truffle, which thankfully came in like tiny servings. So I could just make one serve of pasta to see what it's all about. Turned out pretty nice. Turned out pretty well.
So how much does one serving cost?
Well, it's basically
$2.50.
$2.50.
Pushing off stuff off the shelves.
I see things haven't changed. Well, as long as they don't push truffles off. I don't know if cats like them.
Yeah, don't know. Yeah, so it was $2. What?
$2.50? Yeah, $2.50 a gram, and you're supposed to use 5 to 10 grams. So they had a 10-gram packet. So I was like, oh well, let's just try throwing it all in and see what it tastes like. So I was like, on the one hand, yeah, a bit pricey, but then again, it's like, yeah, I've spent $25 on stupider things from Uber Eats before to have delivered.
Yeah.
So
I think we got those dumplings that was literally like 3 dumplings once. So like,
yeah. Oh well, you roll the dice, you sometimes win. You don't sometimes.
How it was, so use the whole pack on the pasta?
Yeah, so basically you kind of ground in most of it into the sauce with the pasta. So basically just a very simple pasta, just with a very light sort of sauce. And so you kind of mix and get most of the truffle into the sauce itself, and then shave a little bit more on top. And make sure you get everything off the shaver as well, because you don't want to wash the shaver with anything on it.
You clearly made pasta without truffle before. How would you rate that? Like out of 10?
Yeah. Oh, well, this is a very different, strong flavor. So definitely yummy. Quite like it. And I was trying to compare it to like mushrooms is the closest. So that's been my experiment this week, substituting the same thing with various different types of mushrooms. So if the truffle was kind of like a 10, then the pasta ones,
but does it make it a 10? Like, is it like, in terms of other pasta?
There was basically a lot of butter, salt, and truffle. So it's like highly decadent, highly tasty. Would definitely recommend. I'd give it a good 9-10.
Okay, so it is definitely like, pasta. The best pasta you've had has had truffles.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. And then without truffles, when it's your everyday normal cooked pasta, where would you rate that? Like, what's your average?
Well,
Where do you reckon?
At the moment, I'm experimenting with the mushrooms as a substitute, as
No,
a poor
previous
substitute.
to that, like as in before
Oh,
that,
well,
where
I
would you
have
rate?
had, I reckon some of my favorite sort of, just prawn ones, pastas, they'd be sort of up there around the good 8, 9 kind of mark as well. So a
Okay.
good pasta I'm a fan of. But yeah, this was kind of just like next level decadence.
And
It's a
then with
good
your
once in a while
mushroom,
food. Getting to about a 6 or a 7, I'd reckon. So it's not terrible, but I'm experimenting with different mushroom types. If anybody has a recommendation, please let me know.
magic mushrooms.
Yes. Well, that was the other thought. If they're special mushrooms, I'm sure that might be a 12.
Fair
If anybody
enough.
has a supply, let me know.
Yeah, don't maybe do that in real life and get it.
Yeah, this is true.
All right. So I was going to ask you a whole bunch of different questions, but yeah, that was a sidetrack.
That seems more interesting.
Yeah. So
So
first of all, you're back to being in a job, and it's been what, 2 weeks?
yeah,
What's it like the second time around?
better. Like clinically wise, it's pretty much hit the ground running straight away, and yeah, it kind of feels like very much back up to speed, and now just sort of getting through stuff.
Are you enjoying it as
Interestingly,
much?
yeah, it's still fun. Like I like operating, so that's still good. And I'd say the only tricky thing is it's taken me longer than I would have thought. I thought I'd sort of settle into a bit of a groove where I could do other projecty sort of work before and after work. But yeah, it turns out when you work for the whole day, then you do get a bit tired towards the end of the day. I was like, it's weird because I used to do that before, where you would work for the whole day as a reg, then you still do project stuff before and after work.
I think that's called getting old.
Yeah, I don't like this. This sucks.
Yeah, so hence, the whole, just do Python after work. Doesn't happen.
Yeah, I can see why it doesn't happen. I'm like, even today, I was like, man, all right, made nice food most nights recently. And I was like, I got to do randInt today. Macca's now.
Yeah, you literally can do maybe one, at most 2 things after work. It's just either you pick exercise and good food or TV and bad food. Like
Yeah.
just energy level isn't just there. So, okay, where you are in Perth, is it in lockdown?
No, thankfully I'm down in Bunbury, which is kind of like the Geelong of Perth, if you like. And so at the moment, safe, but we'll see. The good thing is Perth is pretty quick to lock down. Like if somebody coughs, Perth locks down. So which is kind of good as well, hopefully, that it won't spread around too much. So it's
How long are you
also
guys
different.
in lockdown for?
I think it's only 4 days. So it's
And just for context, we're recording this on the 29th of June. So
yeah.
So Australia,
They've shut the borders to everywhere else.
Yeah, all of Australia is kind of on a bit of a lockdown.
Yeah, Australia is
but we'll get to that.
For a change. Well,
Yeah.
nice segue into how does it feel? Normally, Melbourne is the butt end of all lockdown jokes.
Okay, whilst having gone through so many lockdowns, I'm like, yeah, it sucks. Part of me was that German word Schadenfreude. I'm like, yes, it's not us for just for once, just in once in like years. And the thing is, it's every other state. It's Northern Territory, it's South Australia, it's everything but Melbourne and Tassie, but who cares? Like,
Yeah, but no one's counting.
Every mainland territory
Yeah.
is shut down. I don't know if AC. Oh no, I think even ACT is.
Yeah, I think South Australia, everybody.
Yeah. So it's just like I feel like getting all the memes and sharing it again. We're just changing all the memes to like just putting not Victoria in front of it. But yeah, it's. But you also know that everywhere else is shut down.
It's coming soon.
It's coming soon, yeah. So it's kind of like enjoy it for the week and just get ready.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm
the
just gonna go
coffee in now. Get the downstairs coffee. I think that was the most annoying part about lockdown there. Just had to make coffee at home. Couldn't walk downstairs.
Where? Here?
Yeah, initially.
Oh, that lasted for like, well, about 5 days. It's Melbourne. The coffee place is
It's
open.
true.
It's an essential service.
This is true. Essential workers need to get to work.
Yeah, it's like it's clinically not safe for anyone.
All Melburnians.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's been good that it's been normal. I want to actually plan like getaways and whatnot, but you can't really go anywhere unless it's within Melbourne, within Victoria. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's where the last holidays and whatnot were, but it's also school holidays, so I can't take any leave from work. So it'll just be for the weekend. And so that kind of restricts where you can go without it just being a long drive,
Yeah.
sleep for a night and come back. So it's been a bit limiting. And I think half the people in my department had gone to, like, people are flying back now from Queensland before it gets upgraded from an orange zone or whatever it is to a red zone.
Yeah,
So,
that's the other problem. If you go anywhere, it's not ideal coming back.
yeah, well, without having to quarantine, that is.
Yeah. Well, let's see what it is on the next episode as to where we're at with this.
Yeah, true.
But I was going to ask you as well. This is something that I've always considered, but what are your thoughts on getting somebody to give you help, like a PA, a personal assistant, to help out with certain things? Because I've thought of it about two ways. One is, well, it is useful to have somebody to help get rid of some of the tasks that otherwise you keep putting off again and again and again. But then on the other hand, maybe it's better just to work out how to have less tasks.
Yeah, look, I mean, you've done the PA thing more than I have in the past. I find it difficult to hand over tasks. It's just because there is a setup time, right? Like with any, like no one's gonna know exactly what you want done for a period of time. So it requires you to kind of delay gratification, if you like, to hand it over. Then part of me is kind of like managing my calendar, like doing all the simple things. I feel a bit of a princess for handing it over, but at the same time, just little things like, say, for getting this episode out, right? Like I'm happy to edit it. It's actually the fun part for me. But then having to type up the captions, the links, upload it, check, distribute, put it up on social media, it's tedious. Like, it's fine, but it takes not long, maybe 10-15 minutes, but it's per episode, and it's not stuff that I look forward to. You just have to go, and you can't put it on, like, you can't link it until the episode shared and has been a few hours. You got to check that the RSS feed has updated, and it's all these little mini tasks, right? And I'd love to hand those over. So, and I think now, just like, say, with the newsletter and with the podcast and whatnot, I think I've got enough little tasks that I'd like to package up and just go, look, someone else do it. Like, I've done it now for between like the photography stuff, Instagram, etc. Like, there's been enough. So it's more of a social media manager sort of a thing. But other things that'd be really good to organize is just order the cat litter, for example. Like, for whatever reason, it's sold out everywhere.
Really?
So a few, yeah.
Is
so
that like the backup toilet paper?
Maybe. Well, it comes from the one that my cats use. Strangely, I didn't realize this at the time. It's a US brand. So it actually gets made in like Kentucky or something and flown over. And I was like, oh, okay, I would not have picked this had I known that it's not local produce. I don't know if there's been a supply interruption. You can't buy it online. Like, the normal pet supply is out of stock. The Woolworths nearby is out of stock. And so we found 1 or 2 packs here and there. So I've just been hoarding them as much as I can until supplies resume. But it's just little things like that.
Why not just change the kitty litter? What's the worst that could happen?
You have seen firsthand what happens. And what happens is, one of my cats is really good and will always poop in his kitty litter. The other one, she's a lovely, lovely cat, but not the smartest. She gets a bit confused, and you'll come home and you're like, wow, there's poop on the carpet. and the problem with that is that if you let her roam and I don't notice it, I have a robot vacuum cleaner that cleans every morning. Smeared poop on carpet is not what I'm looking forward to.
But it's robotic. It must be good.
So yeah, that's mine. What about you? You've actually done the VA thing for a while.
So the biggest problem is obviously the setup time, if you like, in terms of whenever there's a new task, it takes much longer to show somebody else how to do it than just do it yourself. But then certain things, like for example, with the photo competition app, getting prizes out to winners, things like that, that used to take me a lot of time. But now that I've sort of explained to them how to do it and set up the account, which is got, pre-funded with a certain amount, then now it's so much easier. I just forward all the emails and that all gets sorted out. But
Nice.
the setup time to explain how to do that and for the back and forth initially was quite significant.
What's quite significant, as in like how many hours did it take, or was it just lots of?
I'd say at least a few hours there, because I usually do a screen recording explaining exactly what I want done. But then, usually for the first couple of times, there's little hiccups and things, or little things I hadn't thought of to explain.
Like what?
But
What did you find? Because you've done this for a few times. So.
yeah. So for example, with that one particularly, the site that I order the prizes from, certain items I didn't realize can only, well, I did realize this, but I just forgot about it. They can only ship certain items to certain places. And so if the person who won the prize is in a country where that item doesn't ship, then usually I just have a little look around for something equivalent that's similar at a similar price point and send that out. But then if somebody's following instructions, they usually, for the type of VA I'm using at the moment, they follow your instructions to the letter. So they'll just sort of email you back and say, oh, what should I do? So then I have to explain, oh, okay, if this happens, then here's the sort of things that you should do. And here's the, plus or minus, 30%, just go nuts and find something. So that way they've got a bit more leeway to get stuff done as well. And that's where I think, the higher caliber of the person that you have and the more often you work with them, the less of the explaining you'd have to do, because you can sort of just give them the general hint of what needs to be done, and aim to have it done.
Fair enough. So are you considering on actually upgrading to a PA?
Yeah, well, mostly just because since I'm kind of doing a bit of a stint of full-time work at the moment, it's very, very, very hard to do anything.
All of 2 weeks, Karen.
I know, it's been 2 weeks, 3 months. It's so long.
Doing 3 months back to back.
Yeah. Well, initially there was supposed to be like a few weeks off in the middle of like 3 weeks here, 2 weeks there, but now those weeks have like been filled in as well. So it's pretty much 3 months.
Well, you're going to be cashing out. That's good. So you can pay for the PA.
Okay. It's so much work. But yes, so I suppose maybe part of me is like, oh, maybe it's just because I'm a bit busy right now that I feel like extra help would be helpful. But then again, kind of a little bit of balance of maybe I should just do less things.
Yeah. Well, I genuinely think that for me anyway, I can think of at least a few hours every week of just updating that stuff that I would love to just hand off to someone else or get processed. That it's just little things, so I can actually focus on. Like I want to make little YouTube videos on like product reviews and whatnot, just because that's what I enjoy. Tech stuff. It's like at the moment that time is what this podcast kind of takes up. So it would actually free me up to do other things. And part of the other thing I've been doing is like so I make yearly goals, like we both do. We sit down and we come up with them. So one of them I hit a bit earlier than expected after a big clinical sprint. So I've literally been, I've been cutting like some extra work down. At the moment, I'm in the middle of a big sprint just because I've pre-committed to all these lists. But eventually it's cutting down. But we'll get to that because it's part of the next segment, which is random question time. I'm going to skip ahead to that. And the random question for this episode for me is going to be, what's an awkward thing that's happened to you recently? And do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, interestingly, I'd say it's something that just hasn't happened for a while, but I definitely make sense at working in the country. So I was at the Truffle Festival, and when I was just randomly lining up for the free food. yeah, one of the patients I'd seen was just like in the line next to me, right behind me, and it was like, oh hey, and so sometimes it takes a little bit of time to work out who the patient was, and you're like, oh yeah, cool, and then it's
But it
kind of
wasn't
like,
the one that was whinging about the festival, was it?
no, thankfully not that one. Otherwise, we're like, wait a minute.
I mean, it'd be a bit ironic if he rocked up or he or
Yeah.
she after complaining about it. But hey, it sounds
Not,
like it was a
not
fun
him.
festival.
But yeah, some part of the trick for me is I'm like terrible with names and faces. So I'm like, takes a while to try and connect the face to the name.
How is that eye thing you had?
Thankfully, I kind of worked it out, which is good. But yeah, it's always a little bit awkward when you're like, I know you.
Did they also go, I've got this rash?
Thankfully, they were good patients. But yeah, that was my and I think I remember this happens, I'm sure anyone else who worked in the country as well probably has similar problems of, well, problem or not problem is depending how you look at it, but seeing patients or people at work outside work as well. And I know some GPs, for example, I've heard that the ones who work in the really tiny country towns live in the town next door rather than living in the same town. So that, if you're in a really tiny town, I imagine could get a bit awkward. Seeing everyone in town.
Yeah, true. And everyone would know you. Like, I mean, most country towns, everyone knows everyone. If you go, hey, who's that person? It's like, it's so-and-so's. It's like being curry, it's like how your family would explain it's so-and-so's uncle's brother's sister. And you're like, what? It's Joe. But like, I feel like
related.
What it reminds me of is like, when you go to a file on your computer, it's like C:/Windows/ it's the full path of how you're related. It's the
I would like
directory
to
path.
say this is not a Mac thing because it just works.
Yes, because get more info on Mac doesn't give you the same path. So leading on to my story of like finishing off like yearly goals. So there was a work-related goal, hit it, So one of the things that I promised was I would aggressively cut down to free up more time for other projects because like goals done, don't need to do it anymore. And there's a bit of a sprint at the moment just because I pre-committed to all these lists prior to that. Some that was temporary and others I actually just genuinely wanted to try out just because for this specific one, for example, I do a twilight list, so which means it starts at about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, evening, and goes till 10, sometimes midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
Wow.
And lately it's been pushing like 2 a.m. Right. And the next morning, someone asked, could I do that's a Friday night, so no one wants to do that one. And on the Saturday morning, this guy's like, can you do this other list? And I kind of tentatively, it didn't come directly to me. It came to like, I work in a group of other anesthetists. And I kind of put my hand up, say, all right, look, I'll give it a try. I'll just see. And at the time, the twilight list was finishing a bit earlier. And I've only done it twice. So literally this weekend is gone. It was the second time, but the surgeon that I work with on the Friday night, he'd canceled with his school holidays and he's away. So anyway, rocked up to this. It went fine. And because we'd shifted that cancelled list a few days earlier, so we shifted the Friday to the Monday. We got the case done early so that he could go away with his kids. But that's the one that finished at 2. And I kind of finished it and I was like, look, this is the second time I've done it. We haven't really established a regular relationship with the surgeon and myself. And that's one thing about anesthetics is like in private, you tend to work with the same people over and over again, and you kind of get to know their nuances. And that's part of the efficiency is that you know their system, they know you, and you trust what the other person's doing. So they say,
I've had a couple of lists now with the same anesthetist here, and it's been great. Like, now that I've done a couple of lists with him, it's like, yep, turn up. It's like, hey, we know how things are working. It's nice and smooth.
Yeah, like you develop a cadence and you know when things are wrong, right? Like it's kind of important. It actually helps safety, I reckon. But anyway, so I've literally worked with twice, like done max 10 cases together, right? So anyway, we do this case, and then he sends me a message the next day going, hey, Mr. So-and-so woke up. He was really, really sore. He just felt like a bus had hit him, da, 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 da. Do you think is anything related to the anesthetic? And I was like, look, we had to do a slightly different anesthetic. It's someone I've actually looked after before a few months ago, that first list. And I was like, look, it's probably one of the drugs I used. It is known to give you really severe muscle aches, but it happens to usually happen in, say, the 20-year-old footballers that have a lot of muscle. It's just how the muscle relaxant works. It's less common. This guy was like 60 plus, and not the most muscular, but he got the side effect. So I gave him a ring and said, look, this is why we used it. It was for your safety. It is a known side effect. Here's how to fix it. And I just texted him back going, sorted out. Patient's happy with the explanation. He understands that it had to be done. And he just says, oh, thank you. Right. And so that was about lunchtime. So I called the patient just before lunch. Then at 8 o'clock, this is literally last night. Last night, he messages again going, hey, thanks for that. I really appreciate working with you. And I was like, I hadn't sent anything in between. So like, I'm not sure if that was meant for me, but thanks for the sentiments if it was, right? And so the context of it is that he was telling me about how he's moved to the country and he's got like a lovely view, Then I get like 5 photos of this country shack with this amazing view.
Nice.
Like a photo of him with his young kid and like one of those baby carriers and his wife in front of a pond. And then he's like, I get the feeling that you're someone who really likes like the outdoors and coming out to the country. So come by and hang out with us whenever you're like on the way to Ballarat, one of the country towns. And I was like, oh, like I might take you up on the offer. I was like, yeah, anyway, thank you. It's been lovely working together. And I was like, this is a bit awkward because Monday morning, a few hours before the patient encounter stuff, I made the decision not to do that list anymore. And I rung up going, look, it's just like, especially if we're finishing at 2:30 in the morning, I'm just not going to be in a good clinical state to actually do the work. And I'd never actually formally accepted to do that list regularly. But here's this guy and I'm like, cool, thanks. But I'm like, do you expect that we're going to do the list? Like, I don't know what to say.
And it's a little bit tricky because sometimes obviously, sometimes calendars are kind of crazy and overscheduled. And then even though it might be like a really great person to work with and fun to get along with, etc., if you're already committed elsewhere, you're kind of committed elsewhere as well. So
it's not a committed elsewhere. It's just I don't think I'll be like, if I've had 4 hours sleep.
Well, that's the thing. You're kind of already committed to the night before. So then you become a bit unsafe in the morning.
And I never actually committed to it. Like I'd never, and even the first time I worked with it, I'm like, look, I'm just trying it out to see if it works. It's just, if it does,
I guess the good thing is, most people are quite nice. So if you just have a chat to them, explain, and that way later on down the track, you can decide whether it's a list you want as a regular thing or not.
Yeah, well, that's what I kind of did the first time. So I don't, and then there was a big gap. Like the first time was beginning of the year. It's like 4 months later. And then I get this message and I'm like, like it was very ad hoc, and I'm just like, I genuinely, should I text and go, hey, I am not going to be doing that regularly? And I'm like, but I never did it regularly. So tricky. It feels really awkward going, so if someone else rocks up the next month, is he going to get offended? I genuinely don't know,
I think the other thing is phone calls are good for this, not texts.
But
personal thing I've always found, communication by text never ideal.
Agreed, but I don't, like, if it was someone I've worked with regularly for any extended period of time, like 6 months or something, right? Absolutely phone call. I've literally seen this guy twice. I don't actually know if it's a thing to do, that's the awkward part. I'm just like, we've literally worked together twice. There was another surgeon that I also worked with twice, and I was like, look, it took me an hour to get there, and I said no, and he's totally cool with it. Another friend sorted out a replacement, and he was just like, cool, that's fine. Never, he's like, don't have to explain, it's okay, it doesn't work, that's fine.
And I think most people understand that as well, because everybody's sort of shifting around different lists and things like that until things become well established. So I think people will be surely used to that.
That's why I'm calling it early as well, because I was like, I can see this is going to get unsafe pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so the second part of the awkward thing was, so this morning, I normally do a list in the morning, so a general surgical one, and I've been doing this one for years. But in the past, it's two people that I used to work with, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, same hospital. So one finishes. So if they ever run over, the other guy doesn't really care because they're both friends, right? So and then we just continue through. But so the second person wasn't usually using that list much, and they said, look, it's going to get busier next year. We're going to have lots and lots of patients. And I was like, oh, look, it's a good time, because I was reassessing a few things and I wanted to have Friday afternoons off to go to Friday prayer, like Muslim prayer. So, and of that week, that was the only slot. That was the most recent list. And it's the person I worked with the least. And I'm like, look, everyone else is a friend. So I'll move that to the Friday afternoon. And I told them about it, found another friend of ours that now works there as well. So they started doing that list. The problem was that the first person then became really busy and started going into overtime. Now, he's got an afternoon list as well, but he can sort of like organize things around it. I can't. I have to physically be at a different hospital. And we kind of have been okay with it, except the last time this happened, like the other hospital I was meant to be in was really in a tight spot, and they got a bit upset. So this time I knew we were going to run into overtime. So I kind of asked him, could we start early? And we did. We started like half an hour, 45 minutes early. And we still ran over, even after we canceled the patient. And I was like, this isn't really going to work. I've been having these chats, and I'm going to have to find a replacement. I'm the logistical issue. You should have control of your lists. It's not safe if I'm rushing off. It's not safe if I'm making you rush. And he was like, I'm really going to miss you. Like, it's been great work. I was like, I don't understand what's happened. Why am I having all these chats?
Well, I can definitely say on the other side, it makes a big difference as to having a good anesthetist versus not. Makes a big difference. So yeah, can understand if you happen to be somebody that get along with and things go smooth, and obviously everybody has different styles, and so some people I'm sure wouldn't agree with your style, other people would agree, but yeah, it's kind of like it's a bit annoying if you like find somebody that's working on your similar style and you're like, damn, you need to refine someone now.
Yeah, so hopefully I'll find him a great replacement. But I was just like, it's literally a logistics issue. Like, I actually really enjoy the list, but it's just, what do you do? So it's like this weird professional relationship awkwardness. And it almost feels like, what I imagine first steps of dating would be like. You kind of try to figure out what's appropriate. But I was like, there's no guidebook. It's not like I can go to a surgeon anesthetist relationship counselor and go, am I meant to call them? Like,
do I text them?
Yeah,
How long do I wait?
It's not even that. It's just like, the logistics isn't working, right? It's just literally, I can't physically teleport across like an hour's drive just like that. It's just that. But I don't know what the right tact is. So that's been awkward. Anyway, moving on to the next section, which is random facts. Did you know?
Oh, well.
Yeah, I think you should go for it. Your ones are much more interesting.
Well, I was doing some random Googling because that's what you do. And I happened to come across, apparently in Antarctica, they have these massive ice lakes under the ice. And apparently some of them may not have been touched for like somewhere between 400,000 and 2.5 million years, where they are these massive bodies of water, which are basically completely preserved under the ice. So I always thought of Antarctica as just as, ice, full stop, floating around, right? But it turns out within that, yeah, pretty much. Turns out there's actually little pockets of water in there. And because those water pockets have been sealed off for so long, they've actually got their own little bacterial culture situation going on with a whole bunch of different like organisms which are not seen elsewhere. And they're still sort of, doing research, because obviously also getting to a pocket of water kilometers under the ice in the middle of nowhere is not the easiest thing in the world either.
Didn't they find that was like a bacteria trapped in ice? Like this was not the water; it was in the ice itself. And when they like rewarmed it, it started dividing.
Oh, there you go. Well,
That
didn't know
was
about
like a
that one.
month ago or so.
Oh,
Yeah,
there's
it
always
was
like
like
the
they literally had
tardi.
a single.
There's the tardigrade, which seems to survive everything. Basically, some weird ass organism that you can shoot out of a gun, you can like freeze it, burn it, whatever, shoot it into space, and it just refuses to die. And I believe that's what they're also doing a lot of anti-aging research on.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Fair
Mm.
enough. Well, my
But that
random.
was my random learning. Water
Wow.
under the ice. There you go.
Why doesn't it freeze? Did it ever tell you? Like, if it's surrounded by ice, you go, well, obviously you're.
Do you think that would make sense? No, can't say I got to that. I'll, in the next episode.
Salt water or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So my one is algebra. 2x plus y, all that stuff. So it turns out it's actually comes from an Arabic word called al-jabr, which is the reunion of broken parts or bone setting. Like it was literally their fracture reduction. You're on mute, by the way.
Oops. There you go. Huh.
Yeah, and it was invented
So
by.
is it orthopedics?
Well, they kind of decided that maths and orthopods are smart.
So that video about the whole, the bone, the patient has a systole.
Yeah, so
is not accurate.
No, and like I just was kind of like, hang on, I don't really think of Iraq, Iran, like this was Persia in the Middle Ages, but that's where all the mathematical innovations came from. It was a Persian astronomer who figured it out. But when I first heard it, it was years ago, but I was like, hang on, what? I just thought all maths and all that was kind of like the Greeks and the Europeans, but no, there was like an entire. If also like the corollary to this is, depending on what definition of university you use, the world's oldest university is also in like Afghanistan or something, or Morocco. It's actually there that they decided to centralize. It wasn't like the Greeks. It was before that.
Weird.
Yeah, well, as in there's been an entire, so it's like the history is written by the winners thing. So because of the European Enlightenment, they kind of overtook everything. But especially because when you say Middle East, it's just a war zone now, right? But it wasn't always like that. It was actually
it kind of was like a philosophical center, right?
Yeah, it was the seat of civilization pre to the Enlightenment era, before Europe became the power hub. So, but that's pretty much gone because of the number of repeated wars and whatnot. But some of those things still stand, and some of those histories are still preserved, such as in the word algebra and in Morocco's oldest history. Yeah.
Well, there you go. I have learnt.
TIL,
indeed. Hey, maybe that's what we should call it.
Well, I literally had to explain what TIL meant to someone today. So.
Right. Well, if they listen to the podcast, today I learned.
All right. Well, that's it for. Okay.
A random ambling. Yay. Oh no, I think the reception died. Recording. It says recording in progress.
Okay, you are recording now.
Progress is enabled.
Start on the timer.
Tickety.
Yeah, well, I usually do overlay the ticking sound.
TikTok.